Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dears. In this video we will be discussing how to teach reading skills. First of all, we will be understanding what is reading skills, what are different types of reading skills. Then we will be discussing how to teach reading skills by focusing on the principles and techniques of teaching reading skills. So first we should discuss what is reading. Reading is a fluent process of readers combining information from a text and their own background knowledge to build meaning. What is the goal of reading? The goal of reading is to comprehend, to understand the text. What is strategic reading? Strategic reading is defined as the ability of the reader to use a wide variety of strategies to accomplish the purpose of reading. What is fluent reading? A fluent reading is defined as the ability to read at an appropriate rate with comprehension. Meaning does not rest in the readers, nor does it rest in the text. The reader's background knowledge integrate with the text to create the meaning. Look at the figure. There are strategies that are used by the reader on the text with fluency, and then the reading takes place. Teaching reading usually has two aspects. First, it can refer to teaching reading who are learning to read for the very first time. A second aspect is teaching reading refers to the teaching learners who already know reading skills in their first language. A student learns to read once, and when he knows reading in his first language, it is easy to teach him reading skills in another language. Learning reading for the first time is a bit difficult task. Now this chapter will focus on the second aspect because the students who come to language institutes and who come to colleges and universities for learning reading skills or for IELTS for other purposes, they already know reading skills in their first language. Now let's discuss what is background to teaching reading. What is involved in reading? How do we make sense of a printed material, of a text? There are questions I had to answer as I prepared to teach reading skills. I believe that it is important for me to understand the process of reading. And this process of reading includes various aspects. Let's discuss. First of all, what is silent reading? A silent reading is a silent activity. Majority of the reading that we do are done silently. In Western cultures, oral reading was the primary practice until the 19th century, but in about 1880, a debate began on the advantages of silent reading versus oral reading, and the study proved that silent reading is better than oral reading in terms of comprehension. However, today many teachers still believe that oral reading is best approach for teaching. Let me emphasize here that reading is primarily a silent activity. Classroom approaches to teaching reading should emphasize the silent nature of this skill and avoid overemphasis on oral. Different strategies are used when reading orally than when reading silently. Since comprehension is the goal of reading, your primary focus in the classroom should be on getting meaning from print. Make silent reading the goal in your classroom instead of using oral reading. This is simple. Understanding the process of reading has been the focus of much research over the past 125 years. Models of how the printed word is understood have emerged from this research. Understanding what happens from the moment our eyes meet the page, the text, click of comprehension, has usually been researched for the past 50 years. This model can be divided into three categories: bottom-up model, top-down model, and interactive model. Bottom-up model typically consists of a lower reading process. In bottom-up model, we start learning morpheme, then words, then sentences, then paragraphs, and then long documents. This is bottom-up approach. An example of bottom-up approach is a phonic approach to teach reading skills. This approach is used in many reading series. Many teachers and researchers suggest that for readers to be successful, they must be able to break down words into smaller parts and individual sounds. When a reader comes to an unknown word, he or she can sound out the word because of the knowledge of the individual units that make up the word. That's why In most of the primary schools, this phonic approach is followed. First, the students they learn sounds, then words, then sentences, and then paragraphs. One element of bottom-up approach is to teaching is that the pedagogy recommends a graded reader approach. All reading material is carefully reviewed so that students are not exposed to vocabulary that is too difficult or that contains sounds that they have not yet been introduced to. In a bottom-up approach to reading, the most typical classroom focus is on what we call intensive reading. What is intensive reading? Intensive reading is a type of reading in which you give a text or a document, a short passage to your students, and then you ask for comprehension, and then you design activities for checking their comprehension. Most textbooks used to teach first and second language reading using intensive reading approach. Top-down model, on the other hand, it begins with the reader's understanding of the overall text. The reader uses his/her background knowledge, make predictions, and search the text to confirm or reject predictions that he/she has made. A passage can thus be understood even if all the individual words are not understood. This is top-down approach. Now, Godman strongly advocates top-down model of reading because there is one simple reason. Sometimes you understand the words in a text, but it is difficult for you to understand the overall text, although you understand words inside that text and sentences. To infer the comprehension and understanding of the text, it needs your background knowledge and so many other factors. A meaning-based approach or a whole language approach to reading is a top-down model. Four key features highlight a meaning-based or a whole language approach to teaching reading skills. First, it is a literature-based approach. Books are used which contains authentic language. Readers are exposed to a wide range of vocabulary. Next, whole languages, student-centered approach. The focus is on the individual reader choosing what he/she wants to read. Third, reading is integrated with writing. Classes work on both the skills. Finally, emphasis is on constructing meaning. The focus should be on meaning and the gist of what have you read. Extensive reading is another kind of reading and it is a top-down approach of reading. In extensive reading, the students are given longer texts, books without comprehension exercises. They read those longer books and they are exposed to a language at maximum. Interactive model of reading is another kind of approach. This third type of approach combines elements of both bottom up and top down models. And they assume that a pattern is synthesized based on information provided simultaneously from several knowledge sources. Researchers stress that best second language readers are those who can efficiently integrate both bottom-up and top-down models processes. The interactive approach to reading would include aspects of both intensive and extensive reading. We need to provide learners with shorter passages as well as with longer texts. We need to sometimes check their comprehension, sometimes we should not check their comprehension. We just let them know the target language. After knowing these different models, a teacher becomes aware which type of model he should follow in which context. Let's discuss some principles of teaching reading skills. First of all, exploit the reader's background knowledge. A reader's background knowledge can influence reading comprehension because if you know something about the text, for example, you are from a city, you are exposed to the environment of cities, and I select a text containing description of a city, it will be easy for you to comprehend that text. And on the other hand, someone is from village and I include a passage from agriculture and his background is agricultural. His background knowledge will help him understanding the text easily. That's why you need to focus on the background knowledge of a student. You should ask questions before a reading task. You must exploit their background knowledge. This will help your students in understanding the text and to polish their reading skills. The second principle is a strong vocabulary is needed for a successful reading. This vocabulary actually provides the understanding of a text. If a learner does not know the vocabulary of a text, she will be unable to understand the text. That is why it is easier for the reader of academic text to cope with special terminology than with general vocabulary. They stress the great need for teaching programs that builds general basic vocabulary. That is why it is necessary for a teacher to first build a strong vocabulary base for the students before teaching reading skills. Now, what Noonan says, he says that a teacher should ask these three questions while teaching reading skills. What vocabulary do my learners need to know? How will they learn this vocabulary? And how can I best test to see what they need to know and what they now know? While answering these questions, he will be able to select appropriate vocabulary for his her students. Now the next principle is teach for comprehensions. Now we know that the goal of reading is to comprehend the text. Testing reading comprehension for teachers is sometimes very necessary. Monitoring comprehension is essential to successful reading. Now cognition can be defined as thinking. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. In order to teach the comprehension, the teacher should monitor what is the comprehension level of a student and whether it is progressing or not. The teacher should also make the students able to understand his own reading comprehension progress. So the students and the teachers, they both focus on these questions. What is the author trying to say? What is the author's message? What is the author talking about? What does the author mean here? Does the author explain this clearly? While answering these questions, the comprehension level of the students, they will be increasing day by day with new texts. Work on increasing reading rate. One other great difficulty in language classrooms that the students, they become able to read but they are not fluent readers. What is a fluent reader? A fluent reader is a reader who can read 200 words per minute with 70% comprehension. If you are able to teach your students reading skills, but if they are not fluent readers, still you need to work hard. There are some skills that can increase reading rate. The skills like scanning, skimming, predicting, and identifying main ideas, reading comprehension exercises, they actually increase the speed of the students in the classroom. Now, there is another principle, teach reading strategies. What are strategies? Strategies are tools for active self-directed and directed involvement that is necessary for developing communicative abilities. Strategies are not a single event, but rather a creative sequence of events that learners actively use. This is Oxford definition. This definition underscores the active role that readers take in strategic reading. To achieve the desired results, students need to learn how to use a range of reading strategies that match their purpose of reading. Teaching them how to do this should be a prime consideration in a language classroom. A good technique to sensitize students to strategies they use is to get them to verbalize, talk about their thought process as they read a text. Reader can listen to the verbal report of another reader who has just read the same material, and it is often revealing to hear what other readers have done to get meaning from the passage. And this will expose them to different strategies employed by other readers while reading the same passage. Encourage readers to transfer strategies into skill. Strategies can be defined as a conscious action that learners take to achieve desired goal or objectives, while a skill is a strategy that has become automatic. Now, in a strategy is practiced time and again, it becomes a skill. As learners learn and practice specific reading strategies, the strategies move from conscious to unconscious, from strategy to skill. For example, guessing the meaning of unknown vocabulary from a context is a strategy. When the students, they are exposed to these strategies many times, it becomes their skill, and then they predict the meaning of unknown vocabulary easily in the new texts. Another principle is build assessment and evaluation into your teaching. Assessing growth and developing in reading skills from both a formal and informal perspective requires time and training. Both quantitative and qualitative assessment activities are needed for a teacher in the classroom. Quantitative assessment will include information from reading comprehension tests and exercises, etc. While qualitative information can include written journal responses, reading interest surveys, or responses to reading strategies, checklists, etc. It is very essential. The teacher should approach, evaluate the reading comprehension level qualitatively as well as quantitatively. Another principle is strive for continuous improvement as a reading teacher. The quality of individual teacher is integral to success of foreign language readers. Reading teachers need to be passionate about their work. They should view themselves as facilitator, helping each reader discover what works best. Integrating the key principle discussed above can lead to more effective reading instruction in second language classroom. Classroom techniques and tasks. Now these are some practical tasks that can be used for teaching reading skills. As a new reading teacher over 20 years ago, the writer says he struggled to know how to implement reading theory into the reading classroom. There are some techniques that can be used for teaching reading skills. The first one is activate prior knowledge. Second one is cultivate vocabulary. Third one is teach for comprehension. Then increase reading rate. Then verify reading strategies and evaluate progress. So what is the first technique? Activate prior knowledge. It is very necessary to activate the prior knowledge or the background knowledge of the students by asking different questions before reading a particular text. Apart from questions, there are other activities. For example, you can ask them to predict the information and you can tell them the topic of the reading. So when they predict information, they write information, they check that information and their predictions after they read the text and they come to know whether their predictions were true or not. And this is how you can activate their prior knowledge in teaching reading skills. Cultivate vocabulary. Words web are a very good activity for building students' vocabulary skills. They can draw word maps on a page. For example, they write a word in the middle of the paper and then they write the related words with that word in terms of meaning, and thus they can polish their vocabulary skills. It is better to have this activity in groups and pairs. Comprehension activities are many. The easiest way is the comprehension paragraphs, give them shorter passages, and then ask different questions related to that passage. And thus, the teacher as well as the students they come to know about the comprehension level after the students read a text. The reading rate can be increased with a very simple activity that you give them a short passage and you ask them to read over and over again, and then have competitions between students. These are some of the tasks that can be used in a classroom. This is all about teaching reading skills. Thank you so much for watching.